It begins the way you want it to begin. A wind-torn flag, the crack of canvas above a restless sea, and a man, sunburnt and smiling, laughing against the tide as if death itself were just another bad bet. This is what they sold you. The fantasy, the freedom. A world where the laws of men drowned beneath cannon smoke, and every coastline was a promise. But here's the secret. Piracy, in its time, was never a story of liberation. It was a slow erosion of the human soul, one splinter at a time. They don't tell you how it smelled, the rot of salt meat sweating in barrels, the damp mildew crawling into the fibers of your hammock, the bodies that stopped moving mid-voyage, too poor for graves and too many to care. You don't picture the boredom. You don't hear the creak of wood in the dead hours of windless drift, or the prayers whispered before sleep. Not for treasure, for water. This wasn't a life of escape. It was one of waiting. Waiting for ships, waiting for storms. Waiting for something, anything, to matter. But still, they came. Men and boys, cast-offs from a world already sharpening its teeth with industry and empire. They came because the world promised them nothing, and the sea promised at least a story. And that was enough, because in the early 18th century, you didn't become a pirate because you were greedy. You became a pirate because no one would hire you. Because war had ended, and thousands of sailors were left unpaid, unwanted. You became a pirate because starvation whispers louder than justice. But let's go back, not to the swashbuckling tales, but to the dockside. Imagine, Port Royal, 1716, the air stinks of molasses and sweat. Ships creak in the harbor like old men stretching before their final sleep. You're standing barefoot on wet boards, fingers raw from rope burn, stomach aching from a month of weevil-laced biscuits. The man next to you has the pox. You pretend not to notice. A whisper runs through the tavern. Bellamy's recruiting. You don't know him yet. Most wouldn't, not until later. But he's loud, young, and dressed like a fallen gentleman. He's not yet the Robin Hood of the sea. He's just another man with a plan. Another captain with a dream. And in your gut, something shifts. You don't ask if he's honest. You ask if he's paying. Because back then, honesty was a luxury, and gold, even stolen, was still gold. Listen. You nod. Dusk, your name is scrubbed from the shipping rolls of the world. You're a pirate now. Not but by silence. Here's where the movie cuts to cannon fire. But here's where the truth slows down. First, the ship is not what you imagined. It's small, cramped, cracked in places the carpenter swears he'll fix but never does. The sails are patched with old dresses. The rum is watered down. And they're not misfits. They're desperate. One's a runaway slave. Another is 14 and hasn't spoken since his brother drowned. There's a one-eyed woman from Bordeaux who drinks enough for two. No one asks names. They ask if you can climb. If you can scrub. If you can kill. And even that isn't as glamorous as it sounds. Most pirate attacks weren't battles. They were surrenders. A show of flags. A threat of fire. Maybe a shot or two across the bow, but rarely more. Because gunpowder was expensive, and surgeons were rare. The goal wasn't glory, it was efficiency. But that part doesn't sell novels. So we build myths. We imagine them singing shanties under moonlight, carving out kingdoms on the high seas, lovers in every port, thieves. But real pirates, the ones who lived and died nameless in ledger books, weren't chasing eternity. They were chasing breakfast. Even the famed Blackbeard, Edward Teach, spent more time negotiating ransoms than fighting the navy. His terror came not from violence, but theater is into his beard. He made himself a ghost before anyone could make him a corpse. And that's the truth about pirates. They were performers. Survivors who learned that fear was lighter than bullets. But even fear fades. Ships break. Crews splinter. Trust erodes faster than barnacles. And slowly, the dream of freedom calcifies into another prison, this one painted with salt. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, there's laughter. There's music. There's the sense, however brief, that you've slipped the leash of the world. But then a man dies of fever. Another loses a hand in the rigging. Supplies run low in the rum. Someone steals. The code is broken. A punishment is needed. And just like that, you're no longer a crew. You're a court. One man's lashed. Another marooned. A third, hanged. Democracy on paper, tyranny in practice. The sea doesn't care, but the men watching do. And something leaves their eyes. You learn that freedom, in excess, is just another form of chaos. That without rules, without land, without anything solid to grip, people drift. That's the great irony of piracy. It wasn't a rebellion against order. It was a desperate, sea-soaked attempt to build a new one. Not in palaces or courts, but on floating coffins. And every day, the wood gets softer. Every night, the waves get louder. You'd think silence means peace, but sometimes, it's what's left when the story has nothing human left to say. And still, you wake before the sun, tie your belt, and climb the mast like it means something. Because it has to. Because if it doesn't, then none of it ever did. And that would be the worst betrayal of all. Not that piracy failed, but that it was never even close to freedom in the first place. You don't remember the day it stopped feeling like escape. Maybe it was the 4th week without land. Maybe it was the way your captain looked at you, not with anger, not with pity, but with absence. Like you were already gone. Like the sea had claimed you long before the storm ever could. By now, you've learned that water doesn't forgive. It waits, it flattens, it seeps into the soft tissue of hope, until even memory tastes like salt. The Jolly Roger, that familiar skull and crossbones, was never meant for pride. It wasn't a badge of courage or a child's fantasy. It was psychological warfare, a visual whisper that said, don't fight, don't resist, we'll make it quick. Most pirate ships carried multiple flags. One to warn, another to lie, and sometimes, if needed, one to promise death. Because pirates didn't want to fight. They wanted surrender. But the problem with symbols is that they last longer than the people who wield them. The flag is still flying in a million minds, but the men who hoisted it, they're mostly bone and myth now, buried in unmarked coves, forgotten by time and forgiven by none. You don't bury pirates in neat rows, you let the sea take them. And still, they called it freedom. Let's pause here, not to reflect, but to remember. The kind of remembering that doesn't comfort, but corrodes. The kind you can only do when silence surrounds you so thickly, you hear the echo of things that never made a sound. Because every pirate ship had a code, a list of rules etched not in marble, but in memory, enforced by the sharp edge of necessity. These weren't the laws of kings or merchants. These were agreements born of blood and desperation. No gambling with dice or cards on board. Equal shares for all, except the captain, who received 2. Musicians played on Sundays, but not during storms. Lights out by 8 bells, unless someone was bleeding. You signed it. Or you didn't sail. The irony isn't lost on you, that in running from law, you've entered a world of even stricter order. A ship isn't a democracy. It's a wooden ecosystem. Every man, every task, every second matters. The wrong knot, the late watch, the forgotten barrel of gunpowder, all of it carries weight. You learn fast. Or you fall overboard. And no one turns back. There is no mutiny like the ones in stories. There are no grand speeches, no poetic last stands. When the crew turns on a captain, it's fast. Brutal. Almost quiet. It happens in the dark, with a knife, or a push, or a noose. One day he's there. The next, the wheel is in someone else's hands, and you keep sailing. Because ships don't stop for ghosts. You'd think you'd get used to the blood. But the truth is, it's not the killing that haunts you. It's the sound of a man begging not to die. And how fast that sound disappears under the waves. Some nights, you stare at the stars so long they feel like holes in the world. As if something brighter once existed beyond them, and what you're seeing now is just what's left. A map without destinations. A guide for a species that forgot what it was trying to find. You wonder if your name still exists back on land, if someone says it when the wind blows hard through the trees, or if it's already been replaced, like a boot print on a muddy trail. Gone with the next rain. You try not to think of home. Because pirates don't have homes. Only ports, and most of those hate you. Even the islands that welcomed you once now glare when you dock. You bring disease, you bring trouble. You bring gold, yes, but it's what's stolen fast is spent faster, drunk, gambled, burned. And when the last coin drops, so does the illusion. You don't build a future, you burn the present, just to stay warm. The younger ones still talk of treasure, of maps with riddles and X marks, but those stories are tools. Bait, more than belief. Most pirates never buried anything. Why would they? Their lives were too short, their loyalty too thin. You spend what you take. You share it if you're lucky, and if you're not, someone takes it from your body before it cools. The real treasure was time. And none of you had enough of it. You meet a man, maybe in Tortuga, maybe Nassau, who says he used to be a priest. You ask why he left. He says nothing, just touches the scar on his neck. Later, you hear whispers. He was caught baptizing the dying, said he couldn't bear to watch another soul sink unblessed into the black, said even devils deserve ceremony. He didn't last long. Turns out, pirates prefer silence to sanctity. You sleep under canvas now, not sky. The stars started talking back a few months ago, and it unnerved the cook. No one wants bad luck, so you cover them. And dream of dirt, real dirt. Under fingernails, between your toes. You haven't felt mud in over a year, haven't smelled pine or chimney smoke. You start to forget what stillness feels like. Because the ship is never still. Even when anchored, it rocks. A slow, cruel reminder that nothing below you is solid. That your life is held up by tar and nails and prayers you haven't spoken in a long time. They say the sea is a mistress, but she's more like a judge. She gives nothing. She only takes slower than land. You begin to understand the stories of men who walked into the water on purpose, pockets full of stones, eyes open. Not because they were cowards, but because they understood something you hadn't yet. The sea can't kill you if you give yourself to it first. But you're not ready. Not yet. There's still something pulling at you, something unfinished. Maybe a name you haven't earned, maybe a wrong you still believe you can undo. You don't say it out loud. But it's there, a weight. Not on your chest, in your throat. And so you sail. You scrub, climb. You haul wet rope in silence, and when it rains, you tilt your head and pretend it's baptism. Not punishment. And when someone dies, you don't cry. You don't speak. You just look at the water, and wait for it to look back. Maps lie. You realize this not in a library, but on the deck of a swaying brigantine, your fingers tracing faded ink as if it could still mean something. The lines are elegant, the script ornate, and the edges burned to simulate the idea of mystery. A sea serpent curls around an empty stretch of ocean. An island no one's seen in years juts out like a misplaced tooth. But here's the truth you learn too late. Pirates didn't sail into the unknown to find treasure. They sailed because the known had already failed them. There were no red X's, no secret caves, no buried chests left beneath palm trees by sentimental thieves. Just guesses, crossed-out guesses, old rumors made into routes, the kind of navigation that only made sense to men who had nothing. And it's not just the maps that lie. It's the stories, the memories, even the names. You know at least 4 men who call themselves Calico. 2 jackals. 1 man insists he's the bastard son of Sir Francis Drake. Maybe they all are. The sea doesn't require verification. It only requires that you keep moving. Your name no longer fits in your mouth the way it used to. Too soft. Too clean. It sounds like it belongs to someone who still believes in letters from home. You haven't heard it in months. They call you gray, not because of your hair, but because you fade into things. You blend. You don't complain. You don't shine. And most importantly, you survive. Gray doesn't make mistakes. Gray doesn't get close. The captain says the next prize is near the Windward Passage, a merchant sloop, slow-moving and fat with sugar. You've learned not to feel anything when you hear that. Just more sugar. More barrels, more weeks of sticky hands and aching teeth and rats bloated with stolen sweetness. There is no glory in this work. Only repetition. Only routine. And the strange truth is, you begin to need it. Because something happens to the human mind when it floats too long. It detaches, not all at once, not like a break, more like a rope slowly unraveling. One strand at a time. Until you are no longer entirely sure whether the world on land was ever real, or just something someone told you to keep you anchored. Time doesn't pass here, it recycles. You measure days in the angle of sunlight through the rigging, in the shifts of watch bells, in the smell of the food, sour when it starts, acidic by the end. With intention now, because each meal tastes more like wood than flesh, more like memory than meat. One morning, a man collapses. His skin is yellow. His eye, scurvy. You'd laugh, if you hadn't seen it before. He's barely 20. You try to remember what it's like, and for a moment you're 6 years old again, wiping while someone hums an old song. You don't remember who. You don't know why that memory chose now to rise, but you feel it leave just as quickly. The man dies 3 days later. You don't speak his name. You never knew it. Someone suggests burial at sea. But there's no ceremony. Just a body wrapped in sailcloth, slipped over the side like a bad debt. The splash is quiet, the ship keeps moving. That night, the wind drops, dead calm, the sails hang like wet skin. The water's so still you begin to feel something shift in your chest, like maybe the sky is no longer above you, but beneath. Some of the younger crew whisper about curses, about a ghost on board. You don't believe them. Not because you're certain ghosts don't exist. But because if they did, you'd have seen yours by now. You volunteer for night watch. You tell yourself it's for the peace, but you know better. It's the only time you can breathe without being seen. Leaning against the gunwale, staring at stars that haven't moved in hours, wondering if this is how sailors lost their minds. Not to storms, but to this terrible stillness. You remember something the carpenter said once, years ago, that the worst thing in the world isn't pain. It's when nothing changes. When you scream, and the world doesn't even blink. You didn't understand him then. You do now. By the third night of stillness, men begin snapping at each other. A fistfight breaks out over a stolen spoon. Someone swears they saw a face in the water. No one sleeps. You find yourself thinking about the edge of the world. Not in a literal way, you're not that superstitious, but in a personal way. Like maybe everyone has an edge, and maybe yours ought. You start counting nails. Not for any reason. Just something to focus on. 216 along the port rail. 215 starboard. You count them again, still one short. You don't tell anyone. The wind comes back on the 5th day, and with it, a kind of relief so heavy you feel your knees nearly give. It's a reminder that motion, even toward danger, is better than. The captain's voice returns with the breeze. Days to intercept, he says. You nod. You forget how to answer. 2 days later, you see her, a merchant sloop. White sails. Broad hull. She's beautiful, not in design, but in innocence. She doesn't know what's coming. You've done this before. You hoist the black flag. You fire the warning shot. And, as expected, she surrenders. No cannon exchange. No brave speeches, just a white cloth lifted and a crew that looks too thin to resist. You board, you take, you leave, but this time, something shifts. There's a girl on board, 13. Maybe less. She watches you from behind a crate of spices, doesn't move. Doesn't cry. Just watches. Her eyes aren't afraid. They're disappointed. As if she expected monsters, and found something smaller. You can't sleep that night. You keep thinking about her face, not the fear, the clarity. She saw through you, through the rags and the weapons and the rough laugh you've trained yourself to wear. She saw the boy you were, before the water took him. And he was still in there, trapped. Drowning slow. You sit on the deck long after the others are snoring, and you whisper her face into the wind, just to see if the sea will take that too. It doesn't. It holds it, and for the first time in months, you feel the weight of something you thought was gone. Shame. Not for what you've done, but for how easy it became. Gold doesn't glitter at sea, not like they tell you. There's no sunlight catching a glinting edge, no cinematic hush as the chest creaks open. Most of it comes crusted in dirt, wrapped in damp cloth, or packed into barrels of flour, weight disguised as nourishment. Coins stick together with sweat and mold. Some bear the stamp of dead empires. Some are chipped, melted down, unrecognizable except for the pressure they leave in your palm. And even then, you never hold it for long. Because gold on a pirate ship is like blood in the water. It draws things, not just other ships, but suspicion. Greed. A certain heat behind the eyes of men you've slept beside for months. You see it happen each time the hull's divided. Faces harden, voices drop. Laughter that once felt like survival now echoes with something sharper. Like everyone is keeping a knife behind their teeth. The captain makes his cut, double share. The quartermaster counts out the rest. 1 coin short. No one blinks, but everyone notices. The cook says he saw you palm it. He didn't. But now that seed's in the soil. And it grows. You don't defend yourself. What would be the point? Guilt isn't real currency out here. Proof is made up of glances and gut feelings. It's not about justice, it's about balance. So you sleep with your boots on that night. One hand on the knife under your hammock. Just in case the sea isn't the only thing trying to pull you under. But no one comes, not that night. Instead, something quieter begins. The men stop talking when you approach. You get the last scoop of stew. The cold dregs, the bucket before the clean water's poured. No one hits you. No one threatens you. They just make sure you know you're outside the circle now. And on a ship, exile, it's proximity without warmth. The worst kind. You tell yourself you don't care. You lean into the silence. You become gray again, the name, the shape, the absence. You do your work. You haul rope, clean weapons, swab decks until your hands go numb. But inside, you feel it. A shift. A slide. You start talking to yourself. Not out loud. Just enough to remember what your voice sounds like. One night, during the middle watch, you see the stars again. But they don't feel like holes this time. They feel like memories. Distant. Warm. Inaccessible. You trace patterns in them like you used to as a child, back before you knew what the ocean could take. And then you hear it. A sound. Not loud. Not sudden, just, out of place. A shuffle. A drag, something soft against wood. You turn. Nothing there. You tell yourself it was the ship settling. You lie. The truth is, something's been watching. Not with eyes, not in the corner of your vision way, something else, like the feeling of walking into a room where someone's just been crying. The echo of presence, a tension in the air, thick and slow. You don't tell the others, you don't even let it into your thoughts fully. Because acknowledging it would give it shape. And shape, out here, is power. Instead, you sleep less, eat less, and when land is finally sighted, low and green and almost too beautiful to be real, you feel nothing, because you already know it won't last. The island's nameless on the map. But the captain swears there's a cove on the north side. Calm water, good shelter, room to make small repairs and maybe barter for fruit. You anchor just before dusk. The jungle hums with something ancient. You can't see it, but it feels aware of you. As you row ashore, someone starts singing. An old hymn. You don't recognize the words. You just know they don't belong here. They build a fire on the beach. Someone finds wild bananas. There's rum. There's laughter again, shallow, but present. And for a few hours, the crew becomes something human. You sit apart. Not out of pride. But because you no longer know how to enter the warmth without melting. The captain joins you. He doesn't speak at first. Just sits. You can smell blood on his clothes, old, dried, layered like varnish. Finally, he says, "Gold doesn't matter." Not really. You nod, unsure if he's speaking to you or to himself. Gold is just permission, he continues. To become worse. But the sea, he adds, voice lower now, it doesn't care what we buy with it. Doesn't even care what we are. It just wants us gone slowly. You say nothing. Because there's nothing left to add. He stands, nods once, and leaves you with the firelight flickering at your back. You don't move for hours. Not until the waves turn black and the trees start whispering louder than the crew. When you finally return to the ship, there's a coin tucked into your hammock. Not yours, not one of yours. It's old, Spanish mint. Melted at one edge, like someone tried to chew it in desperation. You leave it there. And sleep above deck. In the rain. Because something about that gold feels placed. Not given. Not dropped. And when you close your eyes, you dream of teeth. Not just waiting. End of part 4, part 5 continues seamlessly. To digest. Next part, remember 1000 words. ChatGPT Plus. Part 5, The Pact Beneath the Rain Line. From the series, Boring History for Sleep: Why Being a Pirate Wasn't as Fun as You Think. The rain doesn't stop for 3 days. Not a storm, just a steady, whispering drizzle that soaks everything without force or fury. The kind of rain that makes the world feel heavier, as if time itself has become damp. There's no lightning, no roar of thunder, only the endless hush, like the sky is tired of speaking. You wake each morning colder, wetter, quieter. The crew doesn't sing anymore. No one plays dice. The decks are slick with algae and old prayers, and the coin, that warped Spanish silver, is still in your hammock. You haven't touched it. You won't. Because some objects feel like questions, and some questions feel like traps. There's talk of leaving the island. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's too calm, too empty. A kind of silence that presses against the skin. Like a hand just about to close. They say the fruit is bitter, that the birds never come close, that the fire keeps going out even when there's no wind, and someone swears they saw footprints, small, bare, leading into the jungle. But never back out. You pretend not to hear. You focus on the sails, the lines, the leaks. You work longer shifts now, just to avoid the others. Especially him, the cook, who still eyes you like a riddle he half remembers the answer to. On the 4th night, someone screams. Not long. Just one burst. Then silence. You and 4 others rush below. It's the boy from Portsmouth, the one with the stutter. He's sitting upright, eyes wide, mouth bleeding. Doesn't say what happened. He can't. His tongue's gone. No blood trail. No knife. No one saw a thing. And just like that, the air changes. Not panic. Not anger. Something else. Like the crew has slipped slightly sideways into a place not entirely their own. The captain gives the order to lift anchor. No objections. Not this time. The men work in silence, eyes scanning not the horizon, but the tree line. As if something might step forward. It already has. The rain stops at dawn. Abruptly. No tapering off, just a clean, unnatural silence. And that's when the smell hits. It rolls across the water like a memory, sweet, rotted, familiar in a way you wish it weren't. The kind of scent you associate with forgotten meat and closed-up rooms. It sticks to your clothes. It burrows into your teeth. No one speaks. By midday, the island is a fading silhouette behind you. And still, the smell lingers. You think about the coin again. Whether it came from that place, whether you brought something with you. That night, you find the carpenter staring into the water. His boots are off, one foot dangling over the edge. You join him. After a long silence, he says, I once worked a ship where they found gold beneath the mast. Hidden inside the wood, smuggled there before the timber was even sold. Took it as a sign, celebrated. You wait, his voice tightens. By the end of that voyage, everyone was dead. You nod. Because you don't know if you believe him. But you believe the way he said it. The coin stays in your hammock for another day. Then, without deciding to, you wrap it in cloth and throw it into the sea. Not as an offering. But as a refusal, and for the first time in weeks, you sleep. Only briefly. Only halfway. But it's enough. When you wake, the world feels thinner, as if something unseen has retreated, but not far. The captain calls a meeting on deck. It's rare, formal, he lays out the plan. There's rumor of a brig out of Barbados, heavy with cotton and silver. Eastbound. No escort. Easy pickings. The men listen. Nod. Not because they believe, but because they need a task. Movement keeps the mind quiet. You sail 3 days without incident. No wind, then too much. One man falls from the rigging. Dies before he hits the deck. No one blames the wind. No one mentions the coin. But you can feel it in their glances, the idea that something was taken, and something else is now owed. You try to pray. But the words feel like they're for someone else's mouth. Instead, you talk to the sea. Not just out of habit. Like apologizing to a room before you leave it. When the brig is finally sighted, it's smaller than expected. Lower in the water, limp sails. No movement. You approach, guns ready, flags hidden. The silence deepens as you draw alongside. No shots, no voices, no panic. Just a ship, floating. Waiting. The captain boards first. You follow. What you find is not slaughter. Not sickness, just absence. It's on tables. A kettle still warm. Deck swept, lanterns full. But no people. Not a single soul, no signs of struggle. Just things left behind mid-thought. A knife in half-cut bread. A boot with the laces still undone. It's the cleanest ship you've ever seen. And the emptiest. Someone whispers, "Ghost ship." You say nothing. Because there's a difference between fear and understanding. And you're beginning to understand. The crew splits up. Searches every hold, every corner. Nothing. Not even rats. The captain calls the crew back. No plunder. No risk. Leave it. But then a shout, from below. They found something. A crate. Wooden, unmarked. Inside, coins, old. Spanish again. More than you've seen in a single haul in months. The captain hesitates, then nods. They take it aboard. And as they do, the wind dies again. The sails drop. The water stills. And that smell returns, faint. But undeniable. You feel something like a cord drawn too tight. You step away, you say nothing. But your hands won't stop shaking. That night, the quartermaster goes missing. His hammock still warm. They don't say his name the next morning. The quartermaster, gone. No blood, no sound, no sign of struggle. Just a vacant space where something once was. His belongings, his ledger still open to yesterday's notes. His coat hung with strange precision on the nail beside his bunk, as if he folded himself out of existence, as if he'd never been. The crew doesn't panic. Not loudly. Pirates don't scream when they're scared. They go quiet. They clean their weapons twice. They polish brass they never used to care about. They look everywhere except at each other, because panic isn't permitted aboard a vessel that survives by the sliver edge of calm. The captain says nothing. Just has the coins counted again, still there, still shining, still too many. You catch yourself wondering if they multiplied. And that thought, that idea, arrives too easily. You glance around. No one seems to find that strange, as if the coins have always been there, as if this ship has always carried them. You try to remember the name of the ship you boarded the quartermaster from. Not this one, the last. The sloop from Kingston. He had a different name then. Something soft, something with a... You can't recall it. Worse, you can't recall the ship's name either. Just blank space where memory should be. You walk the deck, slow and deliberate. Everything looks fine. Polished, even. The railings scrubbed, the ropes coiled better than you remember. There's a smell like cedar, too clean. Too new. You ask the cook if the deck's been cleaned. He frowns. Not since Havana, but it has been cleaned. You feel it in your boots, the tacky smoothness of fresh scrubbing. And that's when you notice it, the nameplate on the aft. Gone. Not scrubbed. Not sanded. Just, not there. As if the wood never bore a name. You point it out. The captain brushes it off. Storm must have taken it. But you feel it in his voice, the kind you tell to keep your own bones from shaking. And then someone speaks who hasn't spoken in weeks. The boy from Portsmouth. The one without a tongue. He's in the corner of the mess, lips moving silently, pointing at the coin. No sound comes out. Just air and spit and eyes that no longer blink right. One of the crew, Isaac, makes a joke about ghosts. No one laughs, because deep down, they all feel it. The ship has changed. Not in form. In rhythm. It moves, differently. The creaks in the hull are too regular. Like breathing, the mast groans at the exact same time each morning, as if yawning. And the wind? It doesn't push anymore. It follows, as if you're not steering. Just being carried. You try to chart the stars again. You've always been good at that. Quiet work, clean logic. But now they don't match. The constellations are crooked, slightly. Enough to make you doubt yourself. Enough to make you feel lost, even though you never changed course. The navigator drinks more, sleeps less. You hear him mumbling numbers in his sleep, impossible numbers. Latitudes with decimal places that don't exist. Longitudes that stretch past reason. You stop trying to understand. Instead, you watch, because some truths don't reveal themselves in explanation. Only in pattern. 3 days later, another man is gone. No sound. No struggle. Just an empty hammock and a cold pipe still smoking beside it. This time, voices rise, accusations follow. Someone suggests locking the coin away. The captain refuses. Gold is gold, he says, but even he doesn't touch it anymore. They keep it in a crate beneath the forward hold, covered in canvas, guarded in theory, but no one volunteers for the duty. You're not sure if it's fear or something worse, reverence. By the end of the week, the cook starts nailing charms to the mast. Pieces of old cloth, teeth, sea glass. He says nothing. Just nails them in, one by one, with eyes half closed. Like a prayer done out of obligation, not belief. You find yourself humming again. That same tune from childhood. The one you forgot you remembered. The crew doesn't stop you, some even join in. The song spreads like fog. No words, just a melody, soft, circular, sad. You don't know what it means, but it feels older than the ship. Older than the sea. The next morning, the water is black, not metaphorically, not poetically. Black, like ink. Like stone melted down to liquid. No sky reflected. No depth visible. And no horizon. Just absence. The crew lowers the sails, trying to drift. But there's no wind. No movement. It's not calm, it's frozen. And beneath the hull, something knocks, not hard. Not fast. Just once, as if asking. As if reminding. The captain gathers the men. There's talk of dumping the coin, all of it. A vote is taken. It's unanimous, but no one moves, because the moment the vote is cast, gone. Not opened. Not emptied, gone. The canvas still folded. The corner of the hold still wet. But the box, not there. Someone blames rats, someone else vomits. You check the deck. The nameplate hasn't returned. But something has been scratched into the railing. 4 letters, faded, shallow. Almost missed. Null. You run your finger across them, splinters dig into your skin. No blood, just the feeling that something is watching you. Not with eyes, but with memory. And that night, for the first time in your life, you dream of drowning. But not in water. In silence, the dream lingers longer than it should. You wake, gasping, but not from fear, not from water, from absence, no sound. Not even breath, the kind of silence that presses against the eardrums, not gently, but with as if sound has been outlawed. As if the world has made a decision. You sit up slowly, waiting for the creak of the wood, the sigh of rope, the wind. Nothing. Not a bird, not a wave. Not even the scrape of boots, just stillness, and then it hits you, the ship has stopped. Not anchored, not becalmed, stopped. Not drifting. Not swaying. Not turning to the pulse of water beneath it. You stand and walk the deck. Your boots don't echo, the timbers don't complain. You pass 5 men and none of them look up. Eyes open. Not blinking. Not sleeping. Just staring. One mouths something to you, slow and weightless. You don't hear the words, but you feel them. Down. You look overboard. Black water, no reflection. And then, a shape. Not moving. Just being. Not a creature, not a shadow. Not a wreck, something worse, the idea of something, wearing the water like skin. It doesn't speak. It doesn't rise, but the moment your eyes meet it, your balance falters, your breath catches, your mind tries to make excuses. Reflection. Illusion, fatigue. But your gut tells the truth, you are not alone. And you have not been for a long time. You back away, slowly, the ship still doesn't move. You turn to the captain's quarters. You expect to find charts, bottles, maybe a man clutching a pistol to his chest. Instead, you find a mirror, cracked down the center, and something scrawled into the glass with black pitch. To remember is to return. You touch the writing. The pitch is warm, fresh, but you were here yesterday, and it wasn't there then. The captain is seated behind the desk, hands folded. Eyes open. Unmoving. You call his name, he doesn't blink. You reach for his pulse, there is none. But his skin isn't cold. It's empty. As if something left, and nothing came to take its place. Behind you, the door shuts without sound. And suddenly, the world restarts, the air returns, sound with it. A slow groan of timber, the flinch of sails catching breath, the hum of rope, voices, footsteps, and behind it all, that same melody. The one no one ever admits to humming. But now they're all singing it. Soft. Unified. Like they were born with it stitched into their lungs. You open the captain's journal. Most of it is missing. Not torn, just gone. Ink faded clean. Pages aged out of sequence, except for one. A single entry, a single sentence. The ship does not sail upon the sea sails upon the ship. You close the book and leave it there. No one asks where the captain is. They pretend they didn't see you enter. You climb the mast. Not to watch, but to escape. From this height, the water looks like glass, unbroken. Unmoving. Horizon, something new. A dark line. Not a storm. Not land, something flatter, like a border, like an edge. You climb down at dusk. The boy from Portsmouth is gone again. Not missing. Just, removed. His hammock neatly folded. A bowl of water placed beside it, still. Unrippling. You ask the first mate what it means. He shrugs. We're being sorted, he says. Sorted, you echo. He doesn't explain. Just walks away with the look of a man who's seen the bottom of something. Later, you find his boots tied together, placed beside the helm. You don't find him. And now the ship lists slightly. Leftward. No wind. No cause, just a decision made by something deeper than keel. The crew doesn't talk much anymore. But they do one thing. They count. Each in their own way, some aloud, some with knots in rope, some with scratches along the beams. You find yourself doing it too. Not numbers. Names, but none of them are yours. Not anymore. They're fragments, the memory of language. You whisper them into the dark, and wait to hear which one comes back. Only one ever does. Null. Every night now, you see the same shape in the water, never closer, never gone. Just, there. Waiting. Not like a predator, but like a ledger, something meant to balance, and slowly, horribly, you begin to think. Maybe this wasn't punishment. Maybe this wasn't bad luck, maybe this was debt. And this ship is the collection. A floating scale, taking more weight until the balance tips. You ask the bosun how long until land. He just looks up. Not toward the stars, toward above. You follow his gaze, and realize, with a chill, the sky is wrong. The stars don't move anymore, they're stuck. Like dried ink. You go below deck, you walk the storage rooms, the powder rooms, the empty cots, the silent kitchen. And then, near the stern, you find a door that wasn't there, iron-banded. Black wood. Warm to the touch, you try the handle. It opens without resistance. Inside, nothing. A room of darkness, no walls. No smell. No sound. But it feels familiar, like somewhere you once left, but never escaped. You close it. Not out of fear, out of understanding. Because now you know where the others are going. Not to death, not to land. Not to the sea, but into that. And when your time comes, you won't struggle. Because some doors are waiting with your name on them. Even if you forgot how to write it, the sea has its own form of law. Not the kind scrawled by governors or enforced by rope. Not royal decrees, not maritime codes nailed to a dock post and read once before forgotten. No, the sea's law is quieter, older, you don't learn it. You inherit it. And when you break it, you don't even realize, until something leaves. A sound. A man. A name. That's what's happening now. You've stopped counting how many are gone. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it does. Too much. Their absences fill the ship heavier than their bodies ever did. You step over where they once stood and feel the floor groan in memory. The carpenter nails planks over the iron-banded door, says it's not, the wood is stronger than any you've ever, but they let him do it. Not because it will help. Because people need rituals, something to believe they're participating in. Even if they're not, the ship has started to hum, low. Constant. Like something vibrating just beneath hearing. The men say it's wind in the rigging. You know better, because the wind hasn't touched this ship in days. You try again to write your name in the ledger, the crew manifest. But your hand freezes halfway, not because you forgot, because the pen won't move. It scratches. It catches, the paper bends under the tip, but no ink comes. You press harder, still nothing. When you lift the pen, the paper is unmarred. But your thumb is bleeding. Somewhere behind you, someone whispers, it won't hold what's already been spent. You turn. No one there, only the feeling that someone just exhaled beside your ear has taken to burning things, scraps of old pages from the Bible. A map. You ask him why, he doesn't look up. They can't follow what's been erased, he says. You don't ask who they are, you already know. Because the ship itself is beginning to forget. Barrels once filled with flour now hold nothing. Spoons bend in impossible ways. Knots come undone without touch. Your boots no longer squeak where they used to. And the path from bow to stern changes, just slightly, each day. The carpenter insists the ship's expanding. You don't argue. You just mark your steps, toe to heel. You count, one more than the day before. Always one. Never less. You dream again. Not drowning this time. But sinking. A difference. Drowning is violence. Sinking is acceptance. In the dream, you don't struggle. You watch the sky shrink above you, and your breath slows without pain. You feel something, not arms, not hands, but a presence, holding you down gently. Not malice, just gravity. When you wake, your boots are wet. No rain. No leaks, just water, seawater, in the shape of a footprint beside your bed. But not your size, smaller, bare. You don't tell, you just move your hammock closer to the stairs. Some things don't need discussion, they just need space. On the 10th day, a gull lands on the railing, the first bird you've seen in weeks. The men gather, silent, watching. The gull does not move. It's not cloudy. Not blind. Just white. Like glass, it stares at each man, one by one. Then vomits a black feather, and dies. You bury it at sea. Not because it matters, because it's the first familiar thing to die properly. You begin to notice the wake of the ship. It doesn't follow straight. It curls, like the ship is circling something unseen. or being circled. Either way, the map no longer matches the compass, but the compass still spins. The bosun throws his overboard. You consider doing the same. But you hesitate, because part of you still hopes there's a place, a harbor, a coastline where this ends. Even though you've begun to suspect, this isn't a journey across the sea. It's a journey through what's left of you. Each mile sailed is a memory thinned. Each knot tied is a lie reinforced. Each body gone is a debt remembered. You ask the youngest crewman if he recalls where he was born. He shakes his head. You press him. He cries, not because he's afraid. Because he knows he once did know. And now he doesn't. You start to feel it in yourself, the forgetting. It begins with nouns, the name of a tool, the sound of a bird, the exact taste of rum, and then it spreads to moments, the first time you held a blade, the first ship you took, your mother's face, not all at once, just dulled, softened at the edges, as if they happened to someone else, and now, at night, the song no longer comes from above deck. It comes from below. Lower than the hold, lower than the waterline. You put your ear to the planks and you hear it, humming, slow, layered, many voices, all singing, not pleading. Not celebrating. Just, continuing. As if they never stopped, as if this ship is just a mouth, and you, its teeth. The carpenter goes first. One morning, his tools are arranged in a perfect spiral on the deck. At the center, a single nail. It's gold. He's never seen again. The first mate follows, leaves a note. But it's blank. Just a single sheet of paper, folded perfectly, placed on the helm. Inside, a strand of hair, yours. You didn't feel him take it. You check your comb, you find 2 strands missing. You say nothing. Because now you know how it works. It's not about punishment. It's about return. The ship is returning something. To the water, to the silence, to the memory it once tried to hold, and soon, it will run out of things to give. You watch the stars again, still unmoving, still wrong, and realize, you've stopped hoping for land, you're just hoping not to be remembered. There's a new rule on the ship now. No one says names aloud. Not their own. Not each other's. It wasn't agreed upon. No order was given. It just started. As if the act of naming had become dangerous, as if the moment you speak a name, you risk inviting something closer, something that remembers more than you do. Because now, even the sea seems to pause when a name is uttered, the ropes twitch, the wood tenses, the air grows thicker. You called out for the cook once, a slip of habit. He was gone by morning. Left no trace, only a warm knife laid gently on the galley counter, and a spoon filled with something that wasn't food and didn't move the way it should. You buried it at sea. The object, not the man. You no longer assume there's anything left to bury. That day, the sails folded inward. Not torn. Not slack, folded, as if hands had pressed them closed from either side. The rigging knotted itself again, and no one dared to untangle it. No one spoke. Just movement. Just survival, and under it all, a kind of consent, the unspoken understanding that something was being permitted to happen. Or worse, welcome. You begin to notice that time no longer repeats. The bells don't strike with rhythm. Sunlight hits the deck at odd angles, at odd hours. Sometimes the morning comes red, sometimes not at all. One day passes without night. The next holds twilight for 16 hours. And you realize, the sun isn't rising, the ship is drifting, but not upward. Not forward. Just, through. You check the compass again. It's still. Not spinning now. Just a perfect point. Like it's finally decided there's nowhere left to point to. You throw it overboard without thinking. The splash is louder than it should be. You look down. And for a fraction of a second, you see the ocean give back your face. But it's wrong. Not reversed, just older, wrinkled. Tired, as if you've already been below for years, as if the water has always known what you'll look like when you finally surrender. You stop looking overboard after that. The boy, the tongueless one, begins carving things into the mast now. Not words, not symbols. Just circles. Overlapping. Always in sets of 3, he never stops. Even while eating. Even while sleeping. One hand scratch, one hand holds, you ask him what they mean. He holds up a single finger, then places it to his lips. Silence, you nod. Because you understand now. This isn't a journey. It's a filtration. The ship is boiling away the noise, not just sound, but memory. Emotion. Desire, until only the essence remains, the part that floats without clinging. One night, you find a page drifting along the deck. Not blown. Not dropped. Just, present. You pick it up. It's not wet, despite the damp air, no ink on it, but words begin to form the longer you stare, not written, revealed. One line only, you are not the story, you are the silence it ends with, you put it in your coat. It's gone by morning. No trace, not even a pocket. That same day, someone finds a map. Not on a table. Not in a chest. Folded tightly in their own boot. They don't remember putting it there, no one recognizes the land it shows, no islands. No ports, only a black sea and a white shape at its center, a circle of jagged teeth. Someone says it looks like a cave, someone else says it looks like a mouth. You burn the map, the flames burn green. No smoke. Just the smell of salt and bone. And still, the ship continues. Now no one steers, there's no need. The wheel turns itself, the sails adjust themselves, the rudder obeys a current no one can feel. You stop calling it a ship. It's something else now. A kind of procession. Like the funeral of things not yet dead. On the 14th night, you hear music. Not the hum, not the below-deck chorus, something else, a violin. Off-key. Slow, playing a tune you don't know, but remember anyway, you follow the sound. It leads nowhere, back and forth across the deck, until it stops, you're alone. Except for a coin. Placed neatly on your pillow, not gold. Not metal. Just, wait, you try to throw it overboard. But the water pushes it back, you drop it down the well. It returns in your boot. Eventually, you stop resisting. You carry it. Like a wedding band, like a wound, like a story that has no one left to listen. And now, the crew no longer sleeps, not because they can't. Because they shouldn't. When they do, something watches, you've seen it. In the gaps between thoughts, in the drift just before dream, something under the hull. Not swimming. Not stalking. Just there, thinking, calculating. Waiting for you to become small enough to fit inside its mouth. You tighten your belt now. Just to remember you whisper stories to yourself, made up or real, just to prove you still can. Sometimes it works, sometimes it echoes, twice, it finishes the ending before you do. You don't tell the others. Because now even your voice feels borrowed. And if you say too much, you might be asked to give it back. There's a sound the sea should never make, a dragging. A slow, grinding pull, as if something buried has beneath the bones of the ship. To it, not with alarm, but with that the one that means something is happening that's already too late to stop. You rise from your hammock, boots already on, coat already damp with sweat. Above deck, it's worse, not chaotic. Not loud. Just wrong. The crew stands in place, not looking at one another, not speaking. All eyes are turned aft, where the sound is loudest, that rasp of old metal moving against something older. You push through. And you see it. The anchor chain. Rising, link by link, black with age, slick with silt, it crawls upward from the depths. No anchor at the end, no weight. Just chain. Endless, and wet, and quietly impossible. You didn't drop anchor, you never cast it. But someone, decided now was the time to hold you in place. You glance at the captain's wheel. It's still, still for the first time in weeks. No creaking wood. No sway. Just silence, and beneath your feet, the ship is, waiting. Not drifting. Waiting. The carpenter is the first to move. Not toward the chain. Toward the hull. He presses his ear to the wood and nods slowly, as if he hears something none of you can. When he turns to you, he mouths 3 words. It's not us. You don't ask what he means, you know. The ship has begun to turn. Not physically, not in any direction you can chart. But inward. You feel it in the steps you take, how the same walk now takes longer, how corners reappear where there were none, how you once knew the layout of every inch of this vessel, and now it shifts beneath you. The doors aren't where you left them. Some open into nothing. Others into rooms that smell like your childhood, and close before you can step inside. The boy from Portsmouth is carving again. Not circles this time. Names, but not names you recognize, just sounds that rattle against the wood like teeth in cold wind. You watch him as he works, eyes glazed, lips twitching in silent memory. When you ask him what they mean, he holds up one finger, then slowly presses it to his own chest. And you understand, they're not names, they're promises. Below deck, the air thickens, it clings to your tongue. Your breath fogs even when the temperature drops. The cargo hold smells like ink and seawater. Something has written here, not with pen. With presence. You see it first on the canvas, a stain. At first just dark, then darker, then moving. Until the fabric itself begins to sag, as if sagging under a truth it was never meant to carry. The quartermaster's journal reappears, the one you burned weeks ago. No one says a word as it's placed gently on the mess table. You open it. And the pages but the ink drips, not down the paper, up, toward the spine. You turn to the middle. There's only one sentence, written over and over. We were never the ones steering. The same sentence in 31 different hands, some familiar, some, yours. You close the book, you leave it. The next day, the anchor chain is still rising. No tension. No end. Who stops looking at it? Not from fear, from acceptance. The ship doesn't want to move. Not because it's stuck, because it's found a depth worth staying for. The sky now is a flat sheet. Not gray, not black. Just without quality. A silence stretched too thin to be called sky. You can't tell day from night. Only from mood. The sea has moods. This one is reflection. Still. Cold. Observing you. The cook tries to light a fire. Nothing catches. He throws the flint overboard. It hisses like breath, and doesn't sink. It floats, sideways. That night, something new arrives. Not a sound. Not a vision. A taste. On the wind. If it is wind. It tastes like words unspoken too long. Like the back of your teeth before a scream you've. The men begin to hum again. But it's not the old tune. This one has. It matches the anchor's rise. With every beat, another link appears. The ship begins to list, not from imbalance, from weight, from memory. The water beneath you is no longer water. Its surface, the suggestion of depth, stretched thin and watchful. When you lower the line, there's no end. The rope comes back coiled and dry, as if it touched nothing. As if the ocean has forgotten how to be wet. And then, without warning, the anchor stops. Not slowly. Just stops. The last link rises and hangs, swaying slightly in the absence of wind. Still no anchor. Just a curve of light in the iron, like it remembers what it once was supposed to hold. You hear someone whisper. It remembered its purpose. You want to ask what that means. But you don't. Because now the ship is humming too. A low, wood-deep vibration. Not threatening. Not welcome. Just, inevitable. You feel it in your stomach. In your spine. Like a chord struck by something massive, distant, and intimate. The helm begins to turn. Not toward land. Not toward stars. But inward again. And as the ship turns, so do you. Without meaning to. Not with your body. With your memory, you think of the first day you boarded. The first breath of salt in your lungs, the first coin in your hand, the first lie you told yourself, that this would mean something, that being a pirate, being free, would matter. It didn't. It doesn't, because the sea never gave you freedom. It gave you permission. To become something small enough to fit through a door you didn't know you'd already opened. And now. Now the door is open wide. And you are exactly the right size. It doesn't creak. It doesn't. The door opens the way a mouth does before speaking a name you forgot you gave it. No hinges, no sound, just space becoming less space, widening not outward, but inward. Like the air itself peels, carefully, as though the world has decided it's time to let you see what's underneath. You're the first to notice it. Though maybe it's always been there. The door stands now in the captain's quarters, where the map table used to be. The room is stripped bare. No glass, no charts, not even the smell of rum or damp linen. Just a wooden floor and that opening. Black as pitch, soft around the edges like fabric in water. One of the men tries to measure it. He lowers a lantern inside. The light doesn't disappear. It pauses, suspended like breath in a held lung. Then it flickers, and returns dimmer, but the oil's still full. He says nothing, he just walks away. We all feel it now, the gravity of it. Not pull. Not pressure, just a beckoning that wears politeness like a knife wears silence. You don't have to enter, you just know you will. That's what makes it worse than any threat. There's a rule we never said aloud, not once in all the days of our voyage. No one goes through alone. And yet, the next morning, 3 hammocks hang empty. No sound. No farewell. Just their absence, arranged with care, their boots placed side by side at the base of the door. Inside them, nothing. No feet. No socks, no mud. Not even warmth, just absence in its purest shape. The rest of us stop sleeping. Not by choice, the body still wants it, aches for it, but sleep has become thin, slippery. Dangerous. You close your eyes and feel your thoughts slide towards something watching from the floorboards. You open them again and something's moved, not in distance, but in definition. A lantern that casts no shadow. A rope with too many ends. The same plate of food, appearing 3 nights in a row, untouched and never rotting. Even the rats have vanished. Whatever listens to this ship now, it doesn't waste anything. Including time. The boy with no tongue starts carving again. This time, not into wood. Into skin. His own arm, marked from shoulder to wrist with the door's outline. Over and over. The shape precise, sharp-edged. Obsessive. When he runs out of space, he moves to the other arm. When you try to stop him, he turns to you, and smiles. Not with joy. With understanding. Like someone who's already finished the sentence you're still trying to read. You leave him alone after that. Each night, someone goes, not in panic. Not in ritual. Just, goes. They walk to the door, pause, step inside. It doesn't close behind them. It stays open, as if it wants the rest of us to know it's patient. As if patience is its language, and we've already been speaking it by mistake. You try to remember what brought you here, what made you climb aboard. What made you stay. You tell yourself it was desperation, hunger, gold, glory, but none of those feel true anymore. Those are just masks, and you're starting to feel the shape of what's underneath. The sea was never calling you to freedom. It was calling you to return. You begin to understand why the anchor rose, why the stars disappeared. Why the ship hums even when still. Because it's not moving toward something. It's shedding. Every plank. Every memory, every need. Peeling off the things that made it a ship, so it can become what it really is, a threshold. And you? You're not the crew anymore, you're what's left. The silence after the song ends, the smell after the fire dies, the last sound of boots before a man is gone. You find the old coin in your coat again, the one you swore you threw overboard. Except now it's not metal. It's paper, soft, fragile, still round. It folds as you touch it, bending in on itself without a crease. You place it on your tongue. It dissolves like sugar. It's like a name. Not yours, but someone else's, someone you once loved, long ago, before the sea erased their face. You cry. Not from sorrow, from recognition. A part of you was always waiting to be reminded. You go above deck one last time. The horizon is gone. Just the sea, flat. Dark. Reflective. But when you look harder, you realize, you're not seeing the water, you're seeing yourself, not your reflection. Your memory. The ship has stilled completely now. Even the ropes hang limp, the sails furled without a hand. No creak of wood. No flap of canvas, just a door. Open. And the question it asks, are you ready to be remembered, correctly? You gather what little remains, not things. Moments, the feel of a rope beneath raw fingers, the sound of laughter in rain. The sharpness of salt on a split lip. You carry those not as trophies, but as offering, and when your boots touch the threshold of that opening, you don't tremble. You just step. The world doesn't shift, there's no collapse, no final breath, only a pause, a soft intake. Like a mouth, or a mind. Or a sea that never needed ships at all. Just those who forgot what they once promised it. And now, in silence, are ready to remember. There's no fall. No rush of wind or darkness swallowing you whole. You step through the door and you arrive, though nothing around you suggests you've moved. No walls. No floor, no sky. But you know it's a place, and not because it surrounds you. Because it recognizes you. The silence here is different than on the ship. There, it had weight. Damp and heavy, like breath caught in wood. Here, it's clean. Ancient, like a silence that's waited longer than sound has existed. You don't float. You don't stand. You simply remain. Like an idea too stubborn to die. At first, there's nothing but color. Not black, not gray. Not even shadow, a deep hue of thought, the color of absence learning how to remember itself. Then, slowly, things emerge. Not with sound. With meaning. Shapes, faint, familiar. A rope, coiled like a question left unanswered. A cup, chipped, the same one you drank from on your second ship. A coin, bent in the middle, the one you slipped into your boot and swore you'd never speak of again. They're not, they drift, they appear not where they belong, but where your memory last felt them. You touch the coin. And something touches you back. Not physically. But with clarity. You're not inside a place, you're inside a ledger, the true one. The one no man can write, the one the sea keeps, beneath tide, beneath bone, beneath everything that pretended to be freedom. You see your life now not as a string of events, but as echoes. Your first theft, the man you pushed overboard in silence, the kiss you stole in Tortuga and forgot a week later. Each moment isn't shown, it's felt. Relived in the spine, in the teeth, in the small of your back where guilt once knotted itself into muscle. You want to look away. But there's nowhere to turn. Even closing your eyes doesn't help. Because the seeing here isn't done with eyes, the sea remembers everything. And now, you're being read. Page by page, layer by layer, your face, your fear, your hunger for things no map could name. It doesn't punish, it doesn't forgive. It simply understands, and that understanding is worse than any judgment. Because it leaves you nowhere to hide. You try to speak. To defend. To explain, but your mouth doesn't work like it used to. Words fall apart before they're formed, scattering like ash in still air, and then, something new. Not a voice, a presence, not above. Not below. Just here. Without asking, it gives you something. A memory. Not yours. You feel a child's fingers, small, blistered, tightening around a shard of wood floating after a. You feel the heat of sun on a back too small to carry the weight of loss. And you feel the slow, resigned sinking, not into death, but in the quiet that comes when the world stops asking you to keep swimming. This boy was no one. His ship never flew a flag. No legend remembers him. But the sea does. It remembers them all. And now, you carry that memory, like salt stitched into your lungs. And you understand, this place, this inside of the sea, isn't about punishment or fate. It's about reckoning. A reckoning without anger, without violence, just accounting. Every man who sailed for gold, for blood, for freedom. They all arrive here eventually. Not to be judged. But to be clarified. You think back to the ship. You wonder who's left, who still sleeps with one eye open. Who still believes there's land at the end of this voyage, but those thoughts don't last. Because here, there is no future, only the totality of what's been. You see now why the door opened. Not as a gate. As a one only the sea could hold steady. One only you could walk. The shape of your life is being flattened. Every cruel glance, every kind word you didn't mean. Every fear you refused to name, you are being edited. Not erased, but compressed. Distilled into what the sea always knew you were, not a pirate. Not a name. Just a pattern. One of millions, some loud, some, all recorded. And you sense now what comes next. You will be returned. Not to the ship. To the memory of yourself, but smaller, simpler, a feeling in someone else's dream. A song hummed without knowing why. A nail, rusted and bent, found in a bottle washed ashore. You won't be remembered. But you'll remain. Because the sea doesn't need monuments, it needs echoes, and you're becoming one. Slowly, perfectly. Without struggle. The final thing you feel is a hand. Your own. Placing the coin, the real one, not in your pocket. But in someone else's, someone yet to sail. Yet to sin. Yet to believe the lie you once breathed like air, that a pirate was free, that gold was weightless, that silence meant peace. You close your eyes, not because it helps, but because you finally remembered what you were before the sea found you. You were a question. And now, you're an answer. You return, but not to the ship. Not entirely. Not to the creak of wood or the stink of rope and rot, or the distant ache in your back from a life spent bending toward things that never bent back. You return to the shape of the ship. Its outline. Its impression. A hollow cast of everything it used to mean. It floats, yes. It sails, technically. But now it carries only afterthoughts. The crew is smaller. Or maybe the ship is larger. You can't tell. The faces you once knew now move like shadows inside glass, slow, distorted, slightly delayed. They speak less, breathe less, some no longer blink. The door is still there, still open. But no one talks about it anymore. You're not sure who has gone through, or who was simply undone before they had the chance. The boy with the carvings is gone. In his place, a small wooden figure sits beside the helm, marked with his circles. A totem of memory no one claims. You try to touch it once. It's not from the sun. From attention, the kind of attention you only get from something that doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, doesn't forget. You leave it alone. Below deck, the rooms have changed. They shift when you're not looking. The galley now leads to the brig opens to the hold into your old bunk, but upside down, the bed nailed to the ceiling, gently swaying. You sleep there once, only once. You dreamed of someone hammering nails into your shadow. And when you woke, your boots were wet again. No leaks, just water that remembered where you were going before you did. You start hearing footsteps, not from above or below, from beside you. Always a half step behind. When you stop, they don't. When you turn, no one's there. But you feel it. The presence of someone who's forgotten how to exist on their own, and now uses you to stay shaped. At first, it unsettles you. Then you find comfort in it. Because it means you're still here, still real enough to echo. You begin to speak again. Not to the crew. Not to yourself, to the ship. You find yourself whispering into the grain of the wood, into the mast, into your bowl before you eat. You don't ask for mercy. You don't ask for clarity. You just confess, things you didn't say when it would have mattered. The small betrayals, the big ones, the lies you told not to survive, but to feel bigger than your hunger. You talk until your voice gives out. And then, something new happens. The ship answers, not in words, not in language. In pressure, a slight lean to starboard. A rope swinging once, without wind. The smell of oranges, faint, bitter, gone. The ship is listening now. And it remembers everything you thought it wouldn't. That's when the fog arrives, not like before. This fog doesn't hide, it reveals. Shapes begin to form in it. Men, but not men, silhouettes of memory. Movements without mass, smiles without mouths, they walk the deck like they built it. Not ghosts, ghosts are echoes of the living. These are echoes of places, each one feels like a port you never reached, a promise you abandoned. A version of yourself that didn't take the coin. Didn't leave the boy behind. Didn't throw the map into the fire. They don't speak. But they stare, and it's enough, because their eyes carry the weight of 1,000 alternate winds, and you can feel what they want to ask. With it, you don't answer, because silence has become the only truth you haven't ruined. At night, you feel them closer, at the helm, at your back. Some rest their hands just near yours, but not touching. Some lean in close, breathless, as if trying to see the world from behind your eyes. They aren't cruel. But they are accounting. And in their presence, you begin to feel something deeper than guilt. You feel transparency, like you are becoming light enough to pass through. Like your story has worn itself thin from too much telling. Your hands still hold ropes, but they don't leave splinters. Your feet still strike wood. But they make no sound. And when you sleep now, the dreams aren't yours. You dream as others. You dream as the man you robbed in Havana, as the woman you lied to in Nassau, as the child who watched your ship up and didn't know what fear was yet. You dream the impact you never felt. And when you wake, your own name tastes strange in your mouth, sour, distant, borrowed. One morning, you go to the stern. And it's gone. Not the anchor, the wake, the trail the ship should leave in the sea, the proof that you moved, that you were here, has vanished. You throw a barrel overboard. It doesn't float. It simply stops, like time gave up on it. And you realize, you're no longer traveling. You're being held. The sea has made a fist around you. And it's not squeezing, it's remembering. You return to your quarters, if they're still yours. The door is ajar. Inside, your things have been rearranged. Not by hands, by intent. Your boots face the wrong direction. Your coat is reversed on the hook. Your hammock has been braided into itself, and carved into the wall, in perfect calm lettering. You will arrive when you disappear. You sit. You wait. You breathe. You wonder how many more steps remain before you're small enough to pass through that final seam in the world. Your eyes, where the last echo waits, you begin to dissolve. Maps lie, they always did. But you never knew how deeply until now, until you found the last map. Not ink on parchment, not drawn by hand or compass. This one was carved into the air itself, stitched between the angles of silence and drift, revealed only once and to one direction. It shows no continents, no shores, no scale. Only lines, loops, circles feeding circles, routes of memory, echo, erosion. At its center, a name. Yours. Or something that used to be yours. A version of it, shaved and worn down like a stone in a tide pool. For letters, barely legible, shifting when you blink. Each time you look, it says something different. Gray. Null. Thief, echo. None of them wrong, all of them less than complete. You press your finger to the center. The map absorbs the touch, not like paper, like skin. It responds with heat. Not warmth. Memory. You feel your own childhood rise through your hand, a wooden spoon, a burnt meal, a mother's laugh through a doorway. Gone. 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 You pull your hand away before it takes too much. But the residue lingers. You smell pine, and smoke, and longing. You close your eyes. Try to imagine the sound of a seagull. You can't. Not quite. It's like trying to remember a word that never existed. The crew is almost gone now. Not dead. Just removed. Only 5 remain. Or maybe 4. They speak less than ever. When they do, it's in half-thoughts and mutters, pieces of dreams spilling between their teeth. One repeats the phrase, "The edge is inward," every hour, on the hour, like the tolling of a clock. The navigator, or what's left of him, has charted something on the side of the mainmast. Not with charcoal. With fingernails, thin grooves, overlapping, tangled into a shape that resembles a spiral. No one questions it. Because deep down, we all see it too. Not with eyes, with motion. The ship no longer moves in a straight line. It turns, subtly. Like circling a drain that never pulls. The food barrels are full now. But no one eats, because what's inside no longer smells like food. It smells like repentance, soft. Spoiled. Like something that wanted to feed you, but was forced to rot instead. The sea is glass today. Not calm, frozen. No breeze, no clouds. No temperature, just stillness so complete it feels like holding your breath inside someone else's lungs. And in that stillness, a voice returns, not from the crew. Not from the door, from the wood, from the grain itself. It says your name, the one you forgot you forgot. And just like that, it all crashes back. Your first lie. Your first theft. The way you smiled after, not with pride. With relief, because sin, back then, it was measurable. And now it's not. Now it's stitched into your shadow, now you live inside it. You go below deck, you find your old sea chest, the one you haven't touched in weeks. It's unlocked, always was. Inside, nothing. Except a folded piece of sailcloth, wrapped tight with twine. You unwrap it slowly. Inside, a map. Another one. But this one's different. It doesn't show routes, it shows rooms. Cabins, halls, storage. It's the ship. Drawn exactly as it once was. Except, more, there are places you've never seen. Never entered, rooms that don't exist, or shouldn't. One marked Echo Bay. Another called the Deadlight. One simply says, the name room. Your finger to it. Feel the heat again. But deeper this time. More personal. Your eyes sting. You blink, you're not holding the map anymore, you're holding a mirror, small, cracked. It shows your face, only not now. Then, back when you still knew how to flinch, how to smile without, before the salt carved that quiet panic into your bones, you put the mirror back, but there's no chest now. Only the sailcloth, and beneath it, nothing. Just the ship. Or the shape of a ship. Your cabin's gone when you return above deck, the wheel too. The mast leans slightly now, as if bowing towards something approaching from behind. You don't turn. You already know what's there. Your own echo. The one you left behind when you stepped through the door. It doesn't look like you. But it stands like you. Tilts its head like you. Waits like you waited, all those years, in all those ports, for something that never came. You nod. It nods back, and begins to walk, right to the edge of the deck. It steps off, no splash, just a slight ripple in the sea, like memory folding itself back into silence. The fourth crewman follows an hour later, no sound. No questions. Just a small brass ring left behind. You pick it up, there's no inscription. Just a groove on the inside, where it once pressed against skin. You wear it. Not to remember, to disappear cleaner, because even the sea has paperwork, and something must go back, even if it's just the shape of the hand that held the crime. Night comes early, but not dark, a kind of reverse dusk, where light feels heavier than shadow. You sit at the bow, facing not the sea, but the idea of distance. It stretches like parchment, endless and dry. And for the first time since the door opened, you feel full, not of food, not of fear, but of return. Like your soul has finally exhaled, like whatever ledger the sea was keeping has found your balance. And for once, nothing needs to be stolen. The wind returns, but not the way you remember it. It doesn't press into sails, it doesn't slap the flags, or it moves with no pressure, no weight, like memory moving across a face, or a hand brushing a shoulder that's already gone cold. It slips past your skin and settles deeper, and with it, a strange thing happens. The ship begins to fade. Not rot. Not sink, fade. The color drains first. Then the detail. The knots in the planks, the scratches from boots, the blood once buried beneath fresh tar, all of it begins to simplify. The ship is becoming outline, a suggestion more than a place, like it no longer wants to be seen. Or no longer needs to be. The last of the crew, 3 now, stand near the mast. One is, not a song, just a tone. A low, sustained sound that matches the wind, not in pitch, but in intent. It sounds like letting go. You realize the mast isn't wood anymore, it's bone. Bleached, seamless, too smooth to have been carved by hand. It rises past the sky, and never ends. You stop trying to understand when that began. Because understanding now feels like a form of resistance. To resist. You haven't spoken in days, not out of fear, but because language would bend here, break, slip from your mouth as another man's sin. Even your thoughts come quieter now, slower, as if you're thinking not inside yourself, but towards something, something that listens only when you don't want it to. Below deck, the rooms are gone. There is no below deck anymore, just a single hull. It narrows as you walk it, no matter which direction you turn. The walls close in like they're waiting for you to decide. And at the far end, where no door used to be, there's one now. Red. Unmarked. Locked not with a key, but with recognition. The handle is shaped like something familiar, a curl of hair, a wave, a closed fist. You reach for it, but stop. Not because you're afraid of what's inside, but because you already know. The room behind the red door is the one that remembers everything you forgot on purpose. The way that boy screamed in the water, the time you lied to keep your own skin, even when another man bled for it. The small betrayal in your voice when you first told someone you were just passing through. You step back, the door doesn't open. It waits, and somehow that's worse. You climb again. Not to escape, there's nowhere to go, but to feel the sky. And even that is fading. Not vanishing, softening. The stars have begun to blink again, but they're not the same. They're shaped like letters in a language older than teeth. Each one pulses like a wound refusing to close. One of the crew, the quiet one with the missing thumb, sets his knife on the deck and kneels. He doesn't pray. He just folds forward and presses his ear to the boards, listens, then stands, and steps off the edge of the ship. No splash, no ripple, no echo. Just subtraction. A clean erasure. You're not sad. Not surprised. Because some exits aren't escape. They're acknowledgement. And as the ship fades further, you feel it inside your bones too, that unbecoming. Your fingers tremble, not from cold, but from the realization that you don't remember what your hands used to do before they tied rope. Your mouth twitches with phantom words, songs, orders, lies. You're not sure anymore which were which. And then, above it all, that line returns. Not spoken. Not sung. Just felt. You will arrive when you disappear. You sit at the bow. Where no water moves, where no isn't a line anymore, just a gentle divide between what was and what was willing to end. You remember something strange. A joke, told long ago. In a port you've forgotten, by a man whose name never mattered. Something about a pirate who finally found paradise, and had nothing to spend. It made you laugh once. Now, it feels like prophecy. You reach into your coat pocket. The coin is still there, still not metal, still not yours. You hold it between your fingers and feel the soft give of it, like skin, like dry paper, like the idea of guilt learning how to settle. Sit. not overboard. Just away. And it doesn't fall. It vanishes, like it was never tossed, only released. The final crewmate comes to stand beside you. No words, no gesture, just presence. You don't look at him. You don't need to. Because now you both understand, there's no arrival waiting. Just correction. Not of destination. Of definition. The ship was never going anywhere. It was a place that held what couldn't go with you. And now it's finished holding. You both stand at the edge as the last of the color disappears, and when the wind comes one final time, slow, without warning, you both let it pass through you, and it does, not around. Through. It carries the taste of something unfinished. A question never asked aloud. But answered anyway. You look down. No water, just reflection. You see the version of yourself who never boarded, who stayed, who lived smaller, but longer, and then the wind moves again. And that version fades, and so do you. Not like sleep. Not like death, like resolution. The ship is gone. You don't remember it vanishing, you just realize, slowly, that your feet are no longer on wood. That your lungs no longer carry the weight of salt. That you can't hear the wind anymore, not because it has stopped, but because it no longer needs to say anything. You're somewhere else now. Not a place, not even a space, more like the shape of having been. There is no horizon. No sky. No water, only the after, and in it, stillness. You are not alone. But nothing around you has shape. Nothing moves, there are no faces, no eyes, but you feel it. The company of memory, the echo of people who stopped being people long ago, and became recollection. Not ghosts, not souls. Just, held things. The sea holds more than ships, it holds versions, every could have been. Every didn't say, every hand that reached but never touched. You feel it now, a pressure that isn't touch, but recognition. Something knows you. Not your name, not your body. But the parts you left behind without meaning to. The night you wept and pretended you didn't. The morning you watched someone drown and called it fate. The moment you saw land and chose the sea anyway. It knows these things, and it keeps them. Not to punish, not even to remind. Just to ensure they aren't lost. Because loss, here, is worse than death. Loss is dissolution. You try to move. You can't. Not because you're trapped, because there's nowhere to move from. You are no longer on a path, you are the path, and the only direction now is yielding. You begin to understand the door. Why it didn't ask. Why it didn't explain. Why it simply waited. It wasn't a passage, it was an unbinding. Everything you brought aboard, the hunger, the gold, the story you thought you were living, it all became material, stuffed into the timbers, pressed into the sails, and when the ship dissolved, so did your disguise. What's left is the shape of what you always were. Unfinished. Unarmed. But not unloved, because something has held you this long, something old. Older than piracy, older than war, older than the dream of being more than what you are. You feel it now, not touching you, but carrying. You think back to the ones who never stepped through. The men who disappeared in sleep. The women who never spoke their name twice. The boy with no tongue, carving circles with eyes that never forgot what silence felt like when it arrived in person. You wonder if they're here too, not beside you, within. Like bones beneath a hull, and then, something strange. You begin to smell wood. Cedar, tar, salt. The ship. But not as it was, not with rot and rust. This version is cleaner, purer, not a vessel, a memory of a. You don't see it. You just feel it rising beneath you, like standing on the story that once held your. You are aboard again. But not as crew, as consequence, as a result. There are no sails, no helm. Just the faint sound of ropes, creaking in rhythm with your own heartbeat. And the sound of breathing that doesn't come from lungs. You are being rebuilt, from the inside out. And with it, the sea offers you something. Not a second chance, Not just a choice. You can fade. Or you can become. Not a man. Not a pirate. Not even a soul, but a part of the sea's long, slow language. A word in the sentence of forgetting. A stitch in the wound of time. You begin to answer. Not with voice, with shape. You let go of the fingers that once clutched. You soften the muscles that used to brace for impact. You stop remembering how to be remembered. And something fills you. Not light. Not darkness, something beside them. The texture of release, the flavor of being understood completely, and kept anyway. You wonder if this is what forgiveness really is, not being told you're right. Not being told you're safe, just being kept. Not because of what you were, but because of what you've stopped trying to be. You lie down on the deck that isn't a deck. You place your head where the waves once sang, and you wait. For what? For nothing. Because waiting now is just another word for listening. And that's all that's left. The ship hums a final note. The sea stops holding its breath, and somewhere, not near, not far, a door closes, not to trap, but to protect. Because even the sea has secrets it won't share twice, and you were one of them. Now, you're part of them. And in the space where your name used to be, there's only one word left. The sea keeps it. And never says it aloud. It doesn't end with silence. You thought it might. Thought the sea would press you flat, fold you into a ripple, and erase the sound you once made. But silence is too clean. Too merciful. What remains isn't nothing. What remains is echo, faint, quiet, but stubborn. Like the taste of iron in your mouth after biting your lip. Like the smell of gunpowder days after the gun's been discarded. You are what's left when the story has stopped trying to impress any. The ship is gone. Not sunk, not broken. Just finished. No wreckage. No mast waving a white flag. Because the sea doesn't leave bodies, it leaves suggestions. You drift now, not across water, but across understanding. Drift through layers of yourself you didn't know were stacked. The lies that turned to habits, the hunger that became identity, the fear that dressed itself as pride. And beneath it all, the truth you kept hidden even from the sea. You didn't want to be free. You wanted to belong, that's why you boarded. Not to run. But to find something that would hold you long enough to matter. The crew is gone now. Not vanished. Not dead. They've become ambient, their presence woven into the world like breath fogging glass, proof of life that isn't asking for attention. You feel them sometimes. In a shift of air, a tightness behind your ribs, the way your own shadow stretches a bit longer than it should. Each one a relic. Each one a story unfinished, but not untrue. And you? You're not quite voice, not quite memory, you're the outline of what the sea understood you to be. And slowly, not to trace, but to ask. Did this hurt you? And then again. Did it make you honest? You don't answer. You've learned the sea isn't waiting for answers. Only recognition. You stand, or something like standing, in a space where light doesn't behave. It bends around memory. It casts shadows that belong to other lives. You walk forward, if forward is still a direction. And you find yourself in a room, small, windowless, familiar. It takes you a moment to realize what it is. Your old quarters, from your second ship. The one where you thought leadership meant being colder than the men you served. Where you stopped using your first name. Where you threw the ring into the sea and called it liberation. The room looks the same, but wrong. The lantern doesn't flicker, the bed doesn't dip. The door doesn't creak, because none of these are objects anymore, they're memory props, pieces of a stage the sea has rebuilt, just to ask you to stand inside it one more time. You look down. The ledger is on the desk. Open. Blank. You pick up the quill. But your hand won't move. Because there's nothing left to write. You've already been written. You turn to the door. There's no handle. Just the outline of where one used to be. You press your hand to it. And feel a pulse. Not yours, the ship's, alive again, or always was, breathing in rhythms older than waves. You ask, finally, aloud, though your voice no longer matters. What was the point? And for the first time, the sea responds, not in thunder, not in whisper, but in recognition. A warmth behind your ribs, a tightness in your throat. And then, an image, you. At 17. Before the ship. Before the gold. Before the story, sitting by a fire you didn't start, holding a knife you never used, looking at the horizon and wondering if anyone would ever remember you. And the sea says, softly, I did. That's all, no sermon. No reward. Just that. And suddenly, you understand, piracy was never the story, the sea was, and you were just a note. Not a name. Not a legend. A small sound in a long song. A vowel between waves, and now, that note has been played. It doesn't need to echo forever, just long enough to matter. You sit again. Not in surrender, in acceptance, and the sea, the story, the shape behind everything you ran from, begins to fold you in. You don't dissolve. You don't disappear, you just become less separate. The boundary between you and the water that stood on the deck now waits inside the tide. Not a ghost. Not a warning. Just wait. A memory with purpose, something the next sailor might feel in their gut when the wind changes, something a child might hear in the hollow of a shell. You are kept. Not in books, not in songs. In absence, kind that knows what was there before it was taken. And whispers it gently to the next. The sea never promised freedom. Only inclusion. And you? You are now part of its grammar. There is no current here, no pull of tide. No hush of water slipping beneath hull, because here, hull is only metaphor now. The sea isn't wet. It isn't cold. It isn't. Here, the sea is language, a slow-spoken dialect of pressure and pause, of presence rather than motion. You no longer float through it. You reside inside it. Like a word sitting between sentences, necessary, but no longer aware of its own meaning. You never thought you'd miss the weight of salt on your skin. But now, without it, you feel hollow. Not light. Not free. Just unsculpted. The sea has not undone you. It's just stopped translating you. You remember the moment that shift began. Not with a storm. Not with a shout. You had just finished whispering a name you hadn't spoken in years, not yours, not really, and as the sound dissolved into the wood of the ship, you felt it, the water, listening. And not for confession, not for guilt, it was listening for intention. Not what you said. But what you meant when you decided to say it at all. That's when it started stripping everything else away. First the sails. Then the stars, then your sleep. Then your sense of edges, where your skin ends and the sea begins. And now. There's no ship, there's no wake, just the idea of drift. A constant rebalancing of what's been carried too long. You are carried. Not forward. Not down. Inward. That's where the grammar lives, not in direction. In shape. Below the crust of waves, there is a root system of memory, stretching like old coral, branching through moments not of your life, but of all life. You brush against it now. A knot of grief left behind by a boy drowned off Madagascar, a pulse of joy from a sailor who sang alone for 37 nights and never lost hope. The father's ship leave without her, knowing he'd never return, and forgiving him anyway. Each of these is embedded here, below the words, beneath even silence. It's not the sea that holds them. It's what the sea answers to. You are inside that response, and now, it begins to shape you. You're no longer a body. But you are still a pattern. A rhythm. A repeatable form. And slowly, carefully, the sea shows you your shape, not with mirrors. With reflections that are older than light. You see. The hand you didn't hold, the man you betrayed, not out of hatred, but boredom, the moment you chose gold over voice, and how that silence grew teeth, the way you looked at the door and thought, maybe this is mine to open. It doesn't hurt. Not in the way you expected. There's no sting. Just echo, and the strange knowledge that even your worst choices were remembered fully. No edits, no footnotes, just presence, and presence is mercy, because now you see that nothing was wasted. Not the cruelty. Not the joy. Not even the hunger that made you lie about why you climbed aboard in the first place. It was all kept. Not to punish, to anchor you. Because that's what anchors really are, not weights, but truths heavy enough to stop a thing from floating away completely. And you are no longer drifting. You are settling. Not onto the ocean floor. Into meaning. Below the grammar, below the story, there is structure. And your life, misshapen and fractured as it was, has become part of it. A beam. A rung. A bridge between silences. The sea does not thank you. But it holds you, and in that, you begin to sense the difference between survival and contribution. You feel others here. Not around you, inside you. Their regrets, their laughter, their attempts, each one a note in a long, slow symphony the sea hums to itself. You are part of that music now. And sometimes, without warning, you hear something strange, not in tone, but in someone calling out. Not to you, the sea. A young voice, still raw with hope, still full of illusion. And you know what it means, a new pirate. A new coin pressed into a shaking palm. A new lie told in the shape of freedom. The cycle begins again. But this time, you are not watching from the deck. You are woven into the response. You are the chill in the wind when they first hoist the black flag. You are the reason the compass spins before the storm. You are the creak in the wood that makes them wake, sweating. You are warning, not voice. You are presence, not name. And somehow, this is not tragic. This is not loss. This is placement. A life that never fit in one lifetime finally given a space broad enough to rest in. You stretch, not arms, but meaning. Sea stretches with you. There is no end, not because it goes forever, but because what you are now doesn't ask for endings. Only use. Only continuation. Only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that someone, someday, will walk the deck and feel a chill, and not know why, and change course, just slightly. And that will be enough. That will be your voice, your echo. Your final correction. There's a strange reverence now for the ones who never left shore. The farmers, the bakers, the children who stared at ships like you once did, not with envy, but with reluctant wonder. People who looked at the sea and saw not freedom, but exhaustion wearing a blue dress. You used to think they were cowards. Now you know they were kept safe by something wiser than knowledge. Because the truth is, some lives never call the sea. Not because they're small, but because they're whole. You see them now, skin of memory, clear, but too far to touch. They tend their fields, wash their floors, filled with the weight of repetition, never once learning how silence can hum at the back of the throat like a name unsaid. They live small lives, and yet, none of them drift. None of them dissolve. They go into the earth, not the tide. And when they go, they leave behind things that hold shape. A house, a meal. A sentence finished without apology. That's the kind of legacy you never learn to build. Because piracy doesn't preserve. It consumes. Every story carved on your back was meant to be stolen, shared, or shamed. Never planted. Never rooted. And now, inside this slow, humming elsewhere, you realize what the sea has always been asking. Why did you leave if you had nothing worth carrying? Not as accusation, as inventory, and you answer it the only way you can, with memory. Not grand. Not cinematic. Just still. A face, a day, a hand that touched yours without asking for explanation. And the sea takes it. Not just, accepts it. Like a librarian shelving a forgotten page. You begin to feel the difference between what was taken from you and what you gave willingly. And most of it was given. Lies you told to belong. Cruelty you adopted so your name wouldn't sound soft. The coins you took, not for need, but for story. You weren't robbed. You offered yourself, and the sea. It never said no. It just watched. Because the sea doesn't take from men. It lets men give themselves away, one breath at a time. Until there's only story left. And story, it turns out, is not identity. It's residue. You drift through it now, not just your own, but thousands more. A captain who slit his own throat before the gallows could take him. A girl who stole a ship at 14, never docked again, and was never. A priest who boarded as a passenger, and left a legend, not for his prayers, but for what he refused to forgive. You see them all. Not in flashback, in form. Their regrets woven into the current, their defiance etched into reef stone in every echo of sails once full. You are not unique. And somehow, that comforts you. You were part of a pattern older than maps, older than gold, older even than guilt. A pattern called flight. Not from land, from the self, and the sea was never your destination. It was the mirror you kept chasing. A surface you hoped would forget your reflection if you sailed fast enough, but it didn't. It remembered. Not to mock you. To complete. Now you understand why the ship changed shape. Why the rooms folded. Why the compass spun. It wasn't madness, it was mercy. The sea was showing you that even direction is illusion when you don't know what you are, and now that you do, you're not lost. You're final. You begin to hear something else now. Not the sea. Not the echoes, but land. It doesn't come as a sound, or a silhouette. It comes as absence, the absence of pressure, of drift, of dissolution. It feels like dirt. Like roots waiting. And then, impossibly, you feel footsteps. Not yours, not memory, someone real. A child, maybe. Walking a beach, finding a coin in the sand. Not gold. Not treasure, just a shape. They'll keep it. Not for value. But because it felt like something. You will be that feeling. That weight in the pocket of someone who doesn't understand why they stopped walking. Why they looked out over the water and thought, for just a second, that something vast had recognized them. You were not a hero, you were not a villain. You were the trace of what happens when a man confuses hunger with destiny, and now you're not loud. Not cruel, just anchored inside the silence that follows a decision. The sea doesn't end. But it lets you leave. Not in a ship. Not in a blaze, but as a note. One that hums in the throat of a story just beginning, and when that next boy, hat too big, heart too loud, boards his first vessel and thinks the ocean owes him something. He will shiver, just once, and you will be there, not to stop him. Not to guide him. Just to witness, and that will be enough. It ends in a way that doesn't feel like ending at all, not with a line. Not with a last breath, with a quiet that slowly forgets how to echo. You are not a man now. You are not even memory, you are the residue of momentum remains after the wave has already broken. This is what the sea returns to you. Not glory. Not peace, just place, a place not on any map, not charted in degrees or minutes, but in the ache behind a sailor's ribs when he sees a ship with no flag. You become that ache. A subtle pressure, a story they don't realize they're remembering. The last of you has long since faded from shape. No bones, no, but the sea has not erased you. Because you were never written in ink, you were written in tension. The gap between silence and song. Between the choice to speak and the choice to leave. And now, you are the threshold, the place the young ones step over when they first lie to themselves and call it freedom. You don't stop them. You never did. Because the sea doesn't warn. It waits, it allows, it watches men unmake themselves until there's something small enough left to carry home, and only then does it begin to remember them. Not with love. With completeness. You are complete now. Not whole, but no longer reaching. No longer turning in sleep. No longer needing your name to be said aloud to remember who you were. This is what the sea gives back. A sound, buried in fog, that makes someone turn toward a storm and think, I've been here before. A coin in a drawer, one edge warped, that feels heavier than it should. A lullaby hummed by someone who never learned it, but can't seem to forget it. Each of these is you, scattered, incomplete, but kept, because the sea doesn't keep your body. It keeps your essence, the part of you that knew what it meant to kneel at the rail and ask for something, anything, to make sense of the vastness. Even now, in this final stretch of driftless form, you feel them. The next crew, the next lie, the next name painted on the hull like it means something. You are not bitter. You are not jealous, you're not watching. You are woven into their story the moment it begins. A whisper in the grain of the deck and in the captain's hand when he chooses port over pursuit. You are the moment that could have been blood but wasn't. And that is enough, that is everything. The sea has no graveyard. Only memory. Only return. And one day, soon or not, someone will say your name again. Not in reverence, not even knowing who you were. They'll just say it. A child in a game. A sailor in a song. A woman walking past a bar where your story once paused to breathe. And when it happens, you'll move. Just slightly. Not toward them. But through them. As wind. As pause, as possibility. You see now, you were never meant to stay on the ship. You were meant to become it. Not the wood. Not the rigging, the function. The passage, you were meant to open. To carry. Surrender the idea that you had to mean something, in order to be remembered. Now you are remembered. Not as a man. Not even as a pirate. As weight, as the slow, aching pull beneath the surface of every decision. This is why the sea made you part of it. Not because you earned it. Because you were finally light enough to carry. A vessel emptied of self, a ghost that didn't haunt, a note that finished its sound, and what's left of you now is everywhere. And nowhere, awake with no boat. A map with no X, a legend with no warning. Just an aftertaste in the air before a storm. And somewhere, far from ocean, a child holds a coin they didn't find, it found them, and for a moment, they feel everything. The cold. The wind. The rope. The sky. And something else, the presence of a name that doesn't need to be said aloud. And they close their hand around it. Not to keep it. But to know that they, too, might one day be carried. And maybe, just maybe, the sea will remember them. The way it remembered you.